Listen, this is a weird topic, man. Can you freaking straighten yourself? I don't want to do it because it's milking the situation. Everyone's pissed about the national decks. Hey, let's make a video on the national decks. I don't want to milk it, but y'all want to hear my thoughts, and I want to rant about this, so I'm going to say it here. We're going to start with this. If you've been living under a dreadnought, if you've been living under a rock, okay, Masuda came out and said that half the Pokedex is being deleted from Pokemon Sword and Shield. That's the gist of it, okay? And what he means by that is that there's going to be no national dex, and every Pokemon that isn't like the 400 that is going to be found in the Galar region is simply going to be removed from the code of the game and won't exist in Sword and Shield's files at all. So half the Pokemon are being deleted. That's the news going around. We got the hashtag bring back the national dex. We got Dexit. Who brought Dexit? Who brought the second hashtag? Can we? But it's the Dexit of Brexit. It's the Brexit of Dexters. Okay, so that's actually the problem right now. We can have some gameplay in the background. Half the Pokemon are being deleted from Pokemon Sword and Shield, and this is a moment to think. It's created a bunch of controversy. The video they uploaded has like 42,000 dislikes, which makes me feel so bad. Doesn't matter how bad or how much of a slap in the face what they did is. When you see those dislikes, like, bro, spare them, man. Okay, let me try to get through this round as quickly as possible. You guys wanted to know my actual thoughts about it, so here we go. So when you first hear the words that the national dex is not going to exist in Sword and Shield, and Pokemon that aren't in the Galar dex are going to be unobtainable, the first thought that comes to mind is, who actually cares? Not my thought, the general thought. It's going to be a new generation. They'll introduce like a good 70 to 80 Pokemon, and there'll be at least like 200 Pokemon from older generations that'll be in the game. So when you play through the game, it's going to feel polished, it's going to feel new, and you're going to find these Pokemon mixed with the old, and you're going to find hella different Pokemon in each area. So what's the actual big deal with having 400 or so Pokemon removed from the code of the game? That's the first thought. And it's not a bad thought. Would it actually matter playing the game, making it to the champion, and dealing with whatever little post-game they add? There'll probably be another 20 to 30 Pokemon from older regions in the post-game anyway. Does it really matter that you can't get them all? I'm not agreeing with this, by the way. I just want you guys to think about it. Because it's easy to hop on the bandwagon. People are pissed, you want to be pissed with them. This is what Game Freak's thinking, okay? From the perspective of like a child who has a Switch, asks mommy to buy the game, plays through the game, enjoys it, and moves on. It's fine. That's what Game Freak's thinking. That's what Game Freak is aiming for. I don't know about you guys. I love Game Freak, and I've come a far way with them. I've seen Masuda's face slowly change. From like the late 30s he was, like 11 years ago, to what, he's 51 now? As he's worked on the games, all the effort he's put into it, and all the changes there have been from generation to generation. So I love Game Freak enough to give them the benefit of the doubt as often as I can, but I can also sort of smell the bobo, you know? The bobo. This is what Game Freak thinks people are up to nowadays. From the perspective of a kid who gets the games, then moves on to a new game, it's perfect. That's what Game Freak is thinking. They've been wanting to simplify the process for making Pokemon games for a long time now. By simplify, I mean cut corners. Cut as many corners as possible, and it's been going on. For example, I explained this one in the first rant. How after Game Freak worked hard on Sinnoh, they made this super ambitious effort into Gen 5, only for them to realize the difference between working hard on a game in an attempt to satisfy everyone versus working smart on a game for it to succeed. Nah, that was pretty smooth. A lot of the stuff they did in Gen 5 took a lot of effort, only for it to not work business-wise and just go unnoticed. That's why when X and Y came out, it was a simple, good game. Had a simple story, had a fun journey, leveling up, exploring the region up to like level 70-ish when you fight the champion, and had killer OSTs that I really liked. X and Y was also an ambitious effort, but not because they weren't cutting corners, but because it was a new era for Pokemon. For them to switch from being a Japanese game that later translated like a half year later for the rest of the world into an international release game. But this is where it all started. This is where they said, we're working too hard on Pokemon games and we need to start cutting back. And it starts with X and Y. What did X and Y do? The first Pokedex cut. See, generations used to introduce hella Pokemon. Back then, they just wanted to broaden and widen the world as much as possible, fill it with all kinds of Pokemon to make a wide range for you to pick your team from. Literally way too many options. That's what they were going for. 151 Pokemon in Gen 1. I'll put a list on screen right now. Look, another 100 in Gen 2, over 130 in Gen 3, and 156 brand new Pokemon in Gen 5. Wow. In X and Y, this is when they start to see a different picture with their franchise. Now, instead of their aim being, we want to add so many possibilities that there's too many possibilities. Instead of there being this wide range of Pokemon to pick from, they feared that they were going too far with the amount of Pokemon. They feared what would happen if they continued to introduce all these Pokemon in terms of the future. They feared hitting 1,000 Pokemon soon and maybe beyond. And so after Black and White introduced 150 Gen 5 mons, X and Y introduced freaking 69. I'm sorry, 72, including the mythicals. Who, compare all these numbers, that's half of what Black and White introduced. And then there's no post-game in X and Y, aside from the looker missions. Who got paid overtime to do that? Looker missions were good, but it was not a post-game. The main thing people complain about in X and Y is the easy difficulty and the no post-game, which is them cutting corners. But the third thing is that it went by so quickly. Only 70 Pokemon meant you quickly just found them all, and then started running into the same Pokemon. Then cut to ORAS. They beautifully remade the games, made the Doubts episode for the post-game, but then stopped it right there and cut corners again. Why do you guys think they didn't add the Battle Frontier? You know there is an answer to that, right? Monster literally said himself because it was the kind of thing that only a few players wanted. In other words, they don't want to put effort into it. I'm sorry, how much time does it take to make the Battle Frontier? I'm no game developer, but the Battle Frontier is a simple facility. You build one town, and then there's just 5 different game modes. It's actually simple, unless I'm stupid. But no, they cut corners. They're like, Battle Frontier, we don't need to add that. Let's just kick it out. Again, think about what I said earlier. Their target with Sword and Shield is the kid that will pick up the game, play till completed, then move on. So going back all the way till 2014, that's the real reason there's no Battle Frontier. The answer might be that it's not for everyone, or it wasn't worth the effort, but the real answer is they wanted to cut corners. They even put up a freaking sign there like, yeah guys, hahaha, the Battle Frontier used to be here. Well, look at us, we remember it. Freaking shut up. Then cut to Sun and Moon. Now I mentioned this in a recent update video, but there's actually no national dex in the game. They didn't do what they did in Sword and Shield, but they simply made it so that half the Pokemon exist in the game, the other half just don't register to your dex. I mentioned this in the update video too, but I always used to look at the Pokedex entries because it gave more lore to the Pokemon. Even back in like Fire Red and Leaf Green, there would be special Pokedex entries for all the Hoenn Pokemon that was different than their Hoenn Dex entries. And it was all very cool with passion poured into it. I used to wonder back then, like, they're making all these Pokedex entries, who's reading it? Like, I'm reading it, but do people actually care to find these tidbits? And lo and behold, as time passes, they're like, hey, this is a corner we can cut off. And they decided, oh, it was too much to write, and got rid of half the Pokedex entries. Even though they could have just copy and pasted older ones. I mean, they've done it before. But maybe they intentionally took out half the Pokedex to just make it established, put a clear line in between the Pokemon they want you to find in the game versus the national dex that will soon disappear. When they did this in Sun and Moon, they already knew that in the next games, they would start to delete Pokemon from games if it wasn't needed. Now, let's not even talk about all the other corners they cut from Sun and Moon and how they just didn't add a post game. They started in X and Y, and slowly they've been trying to cut more and more corners. I know you guys have been wondering, like somewhere in the back of your head, like what's up with Pokemon? Something is odd. And then if you go on like the brutal 4chan, they say stuff like the last real Pokemon game was Gen 4 or Gen 5. And it's because since then you can feel the less effort being put into the games, less passion, and how it just doesn't feel the same. And it's not that the games are bad. The games are good. They're selling as good as they should be selling. I'm not hating on the games, but you can feel that there's less effort put in. And, oh yeah, and about me saying that they wanted to cut the dexes, let's move on to the next game. No, not Sword and Shield. Let's Go. Listen, let me spend 1 minute on this. Let's Go was a smart move. Business-wise, okay? Let's just talk Game Freak business. Remakes and new gens was like a trend Game Freak started when they ambitiously made Fire Red and Leaf Green and made it like wonderfully crossover with Ruby and Sapphire. And they've continued the trend since. They remade Heart Gold and Soul Silver with Diamond and Pearl, then remade ORAS with X and Y. But I know when ORAS came out and Game Freak looked back at how ORAS being remade means that Gen 1 cycle is up again. It's another anniversary since Gen 1 came out. It's a shame we can't just remake Gen 1 again. But then they came up with Let's Go, and Let's Go is a really fun idea. And they also hit this funny nostalgia where they made it a point to stay true to Red and Blue. The fact that there's only Gen 1 Pokemon, no abilities, all this crap. It's like they're making you relive that time period where Red and Blue was about to come out. That's how I see it as a fan. But what they were really doing is making a new division of the main series games that's easier to make on their end. Even knowing this, I still wouldn't blame them for doing it, because when it's 2020 and they announce Let's Go Ho-Oh and Lugia or whatever, the fans who are familiar with the trend will be excited to relive Gold and Silver's time period. So I don't blame Let's Go. I think it was a cool idea, but I do blame them when I hear what they've done with Sword and Shield. Now we can only look back at Let's Go as them easing us in slowly to the idea of not having every Pokemon in the game. Okay, going back to Sword and Shield, I said this in an update too. It's gonna be like when we were playing X and Y before Pokebank came out, and we only had the same 200 Pokemon to work with, except Pokebank is never coming out, in the sense that in Sword and Shield, you're never getting those other Pokemon. And they're doing this because of the Battle Frontier reason. They think that it only tends to a small group of people and not the wider audience. Game Freak thinks that only few people care about half the Pokemon being erased. So little that it's not worth the effort to make the rest. Which, to put it brutally, I'm no CEO of a company, but that's just straight up wrong. Like, that is incorrect. You're wrong. You are literally Pokemon. The fact that it's a game filled with every animal ever and capturable, that there's hundreds to nearly 1,000 options for you to make your team and just explore the region is what Pokemon is. It's like the core. It's all that everything else was built around. Pokemon fans literally can recall all 800 Pokemon like madmen because that is the #1 part of Pokemon. The fact that there are all these animals with special typings, stats, abilities, moves. We've learned all of it. We've learned to predict their movements and fight against each other. We've made strategy. We have these dudes memorized. This part of the game is so important that that's how closely we remember them. If there's anything to cut from the game, the one thing that needed to be behind like a red line that you can never cross literally is the Pokemon. I've never made a living dex. I mean, maybe I sort of tried like back in Leaf Green or Pearl days, but I had no friends. I did. Shut up. I'm just saying like I had no friends. I did. You guys, you know what I'm saying, right? Listen, I've never made a living dex, but do you know how many people have and do? Do you know how many people sink 100 to 200 hours on their save file and play this game for years like it's an Animal Crossing game? It's not a pick up, beat, and put down game. It's to some, but you've got it wrong. To the majority who are Pokemon fans, it's the opposite. People don't beat a Pokemon game, then return it to the store or trade it in for another game. No, they freaking keep it in their house. You don't return Pokemon games. You always can go back to it. You always want to dump more hours into it, restart. But when you restart, you save your progress. You transfer over your Pokemon if you can. It was harder back in the day because you needed a second game, but now there's Pokebank. Now you really can transfer over your progress and start again. Not only is it not the same game you played the first time because it's not like 4 Final Fantasy characters you're going through again, you can rebuild your team like 400 different ways. It's one of those games, man. People buy double packs of both games and do all the stuff because the nature of the game is like that. I used to say stuff like in Diamond and Pearl, it was a really exciting feeling knowing that as much as you played through the game, caught Azelf, unlocked Cresselia, and filled your team with level 100s after months of playing and catching any Pokemon you can find, that the entire time and still in your game, there was a Darkrai hiding behind Cresselia's island, a Shaman hiding behind the Pokemon League, and Arceus on top of Sky Pillar, literally not just in the game, but in the overworld, waiting to be encountered. But you just couldn't do it. The feeling of things existing in the game that you wish so bad to unlock, things that you can continue to do, is one of my favorite feelings in Pokemon. And like back when I had Leaf Green, and after years just playing through, beating Elite Four like freaking every day, I found my link cable and could trade, and I spent weeks just finding out stuff to evolving stuff by trade, finding dragon skills, finding out how to make Slowking, learning it doesn't come from Slowpoke. All the potential in the game was fun as a kid. Now you're giving people this new game, but you're leaving one of the most important things out. Let's freaking move on. Wi-Fi battles. Does anyone Wi-Fi battle on Let's Go? Okay, I've done a few, but what can you even do? You Wi-Fi battle there because it has the latest graphics, because it's the latest engine, but there's only like 150 and then an extra 20 Pokemon. What can you freaking do with that? Sinnoh days were insane for the metagame. All these new items and 400 Pokemon with fun strategy. Unova days were just as good. 600 Pokemon this time. Kalos days, Alola days, up to 800 Pokemon. The metagame was crazy. People using Ultra Beasts. What you gonna do with like 200 to 300 Pokemon in Sword and Shield? What, is this your master strategy? Did you want to like freaking control the metagame? Like, yo, these Pokemon use these. Didn't you say earlier? You even said for Sword and Shield. Not only for Mega Evolution did you say, aside from some of the popular Pokemon, we wanted to give Megas to some of the weaker Pokemon to give them a chance, like Beedrill, so that more people would use them. And then you said again for Sword and Shield, we introduced Dynamax Evolution, and Mega Evolution won't return because Dynamax works for everyone, and we want you to be able to use every Pokemon in the game and Dynamax them to their full power, something we couldn't do with Mega Evolution. And then you freaking gave us only 300 to work with? Fam, there's only 300-ish Pokemon or 400 Pokemon in the games, in the metagame. Like Game Freak, do you want to have like a feeling of grasp over the fan base? Like, do you want to control your fans being excited that certain Pokemon are in the game? Do you want to get them used to the idea that Pokemon are supposed to be cut out so that they're excited when they see Tyranitar in a Gen 9 trailer? Like, you don't like the fact that they just expect that, they expect us to add all 900 Pokemon. Fam, that's what Pokemon is. The cut of the Pokedex has started upsetting fans about Dynamaxing. I get what Game Freak's on. It's maybe something I'll touch on in a future rant about why they don't go back to Megas and such, but a lot of effort that goes into these games is totally being overshadowed by all the corners they're trying to cut. and now taking away one of the most important things in the game. Now people are like getting so pissed they're looking at the trees in the background, in the mountains, and calling them paper, saying that it's not even 3D, it's just a picture that's far away. Now they're picking apart the whole game since they're on the defense. Now, there's also something scandalous about this, which is money. You might see where I'm going with this. Nintendo Online costs money, $4 a month, and it allows you to do online features. Without it, you can't go online. It's not like the 3DS, meaning you have to pay a monthly fee to even Wi-Fi battle with this limited national decks or trade with others. That's not the scandalous part, I'm just saying. What I'm really getting at is Pokemon Home. I don't know if you need to pay for both Pokemon Home and Nintendo Switch Online. Like you have to pay for both monthly subscriptions at once in order to access it on your Switch. But let me just remind you all, Pokemon Home is the new and improved Pokebank. You can transfer Pokemon from Pokebank to there, and then transfer Pokemon from there to Sword and Shield. Pokemon Go and Pokemon Let's Go can also be transferred to Pokemon Home, where you can add it to Sword and Shield. And this is the problem. Like, I'll put a picture up on screen. Just stare at it for a couple of seconds and tell me if you realize it. Can I spoil it for you? They're holding your Pokemon hostage. They got your Pokemon who are in Pokemon Home, all of them at gunpoint. Pokemon gunpoint. Pokemon Sword, Shield, and gunpoint. Once you transfer your living dex, or your precious shiny that you got like 12 years ago, or any Pokemon with sentimental value, it's stuck in Pokemon Home. And then you can't transfer it to Sword and Shield. So now you have to pay the monthly fee for Pokemon Home, or else your Pokemon gets deleted. All your Pokemon get deleted. There's literally no way to get it back out. It's stuck there. Is it their intention to hold your Pokemon hostage and make you pay monthly so they don't die? I don't know. It's a Game Freak, man. I give him the benefit of the doubt. You might be thinking, but wait, if I transfer my Ho-Oh from earlier games to Pokemon Home, if Ho-Oh's deleted in Sword and Shield, why don't I just send it to Pokemon Go? It's compatible, right? Fam, you can't. Look at these arrows. You can transfer from Pokemon Bank, you can transfer from Let's Go, and you can transfer from and back to Sword and Shield. You can only transfer from Pokemon Go. So you can't put your Ho-Oh in Pokemon Go, it won't go back. It's crazy. The question that arises is, what the hell is Game Freak on? Why would they do this? Aside from wanting to cut corners, which isn't speculation. Of course, Matsu won't confirm it himself, I'm cutting corners. But I'm freaking certain that Game Freak has intentionally been cutting corners for generations. That's what I'm trying to say. Like fam, how you go from all these overworld legendaries? How do you go from making actual version differences like White Forest and Black City, crossing over Cynthia to the game's events and cutscenes that are saved for movie releases, to like no post games, no actual version differences aside from catching a different legendary, and Wi-Fi events for Volcanion and Zorora instead of them even being in the games? It's like, you can see it yourself. They've either been on something very illegal, smoking, don't smoke, or they're intentionally cutting corners. Like, you have to have the wrong idea of what Pokemon is to be doing all this stuff if you're not cutting corners. They're definitely cutting corners. But then there's another reason Game Freak might be doing this. They've run out of time. Pokemon is a big franchise. They got the anime, they got the TCG merch, all these weird spin-off shows, Pokenchi, who knows, a lot more. Everything is set in line. It has to line up with each other. Sun and Moon's anime is coming to a close. They can't just delay the game. If they have low time, they have to meet the deadline. And I believe it, to be honest. There's a lot of pressure on them. You hear about all the different game developer staffs in Nintendo being overworked, and then news like Nintendo delaying Animal Crossing all this time in order to not overwork their developers. It's a real thing. But then about all this missing time, which I don't know much about the models and animating, but this dude who knows shows the difference between X and Y and Sword and Shield's models, and there's just a slight change to the texture. And essentially, it just doesn't take that long to make the adjustment, to make it into the cool, like, anime texture we have in Galar. Yes, it takes a while to adjust these textures for 900 Pokemon, or actually over 1,000 models, including all the different forms. But also, it's freaking Game Freak. Like, it's Game Freak. Y'all making billions. This is literally what you're supposed to do. I can feel bad and pat your head and say, yo, it's okay. But this is literally what developers do. How are you gonna create like 800 Pokemon models for X and Y? Like from freaking scratch. And then be too lazy to just touch them up and put them into Sword and Shield. I bet you could even write a script for that. A script that takes the models, freaking does whatever shading, and then exports it. And then you just have a team overlooking it. I'm not a developer, so I can't talk in the field, but fam, like, this is what you do. I won't even hate on the fact that you use the same models for 6 years, since X and Y. It worked. But you really can't make the touch-ups or something? Also, I'm intentionally trying to sound angry. I'm not And you may be thinking, oh, T-Tar, there's the animations. The models might be different and all sorts. But people have compared the gameplay seen in the trailers. And when they show the Pokemon fainting, like Bunnelby, you can see it's the same animation, the fainting animation. It's the same thing. X and Y and Galar have the same models and the same animations. All the unused animations of Pokemon walking from 6 years ago in X and Y, that's exactly what they're using when you see freaking Tyranitar and Rhydon walking in the overworld, like in the nature areas. This is all stuff you made in the past. You're really running low on time that you can't do like small touch-ups now. I remember in 2017, that's 2 years ago, this video was posted. Ishihara is saying that they've begun development on a Nintendo Switch core Pokemon title. This is in 2017. That wasn't Let's Go that they're working on. Game Freak does call Let's Go a main series game, but Sword and Shield is what a core game is. 2017 is when the Switch came out anyway. You've probably been working on this since before the Switch even hit the shelves. Like, you don't make the announcement when you begin development. You have to have enough work and pre-planning at least to go forward with announcing it. You're saying that your billions of dollar company is out of time? Maybe, man. Maybe. Listen, give them a benefit of the doubt. Maybe they didn't realize and they didn't plan. Like, they slept in for like a month. Like, shoot, I didn't set an alarm. Fine. Then that's when we get to something I've been thinking about for a few days. Maybe they can make something out of this. Okay. And by that, I mean the solution. Okay. For one, this is what I think Game Freak is thinking. They have to be thinking this. For one, I think Game Freak has looked back at the older generations and noticed the trend, as well as potential. Pokemon Crystal gets half the sales of Silver and Gold combined. Same for Emerald, same for Platinum, and same for Ultra Sun and Moon combined. And maybe they see potential in this. Maybe they've asked themselves the question, what more can we do so that when we make Pokemon Knight or Arrow or Pokemon Lance, when we release this, what can we do so that more people have a reason to buy it? And what I'm thinking is they've settled on removing the national dex in these games and making it a selling point for, let's say, Pokemon Lance when it comes out. Let's call it Pokemon Gun, okay? We know it's not Gun, but that you can get... I feel weird saying Pokemon Lance. Can you imagine how differently the sales would be? It would go from like half of Sword and Shield combined to maybe like 60 to 70%. People who play the metagame have to get the third version, and it would be a major reason. It'd be a freaking cheap shot slapping the face on my ass. And then people who bought Sword and Shield now have this half-assed game that can't Wi-Fi battle unless the opponent has a strict team within your game, like they did with Oraz vs X and Y. But it could work. If they're not intentionally cutting corners on Sword and Shield, then maybe they took it out to make it a selling point later. Maybe they could release a DLC, Pokemon Sword and Shield DLC that adds the rest of the Pokemon. But except they will release it like 2 months after Pokemon Gun comes out, just so anyone who's impatient can't quickly spend $5 and upgrade and have to pay for the whole new game. That sounds possible. I don't know if Game Freak's like, nah, if that, we just don't want to add them. But this could sparkle in their eyes as another way to cash grab. Not that I like that term since people just bandwagon with it. But then there's another thing. The last thing, okay? This rant is over. You know my opinion. You know what the thoughts are. This is the last thing. This is the last thing that's gonna get in the way with the national dex. Okay? It's Game Freak's pride.
Oh my.
Fam. Look at me. Just envision this, okay? If Masuda says something the audience doesn't like the national dex is now deleted and many older Pokemon won't return, and the internet starts raging and hashtagging, bring back the national dex, and then a few months later, Masuda magically says he will listen and add the national dex, that's going to stain Game Freak really, really hard. Not only are you going to get even more complaints now, thinking our change.org petitions can really change things, change, but people are going to find even more things to complain about because they feel like they have the power to, and only keep enforcing them further instead of just making a complaint that dies down in a month. People will try to keep the complaints going. The amount of things people have already complained about, the numerous things in Let's Go, the daily spiel, the daily spiel with wanting Mega Evolutions back. Now fans will start saying, bro, get rid of Dynamax. And it'll start spreading through the community as a stance, and people will start hating Dynamax together in an attempt to change parts of the game and do their part. As important as this would be, you know, this isn't like the Sonic movie. Like, you'll change Sonic's design. Okay, we will. Game Freak's pride would take a hit. And even they know that if they fall and listen to the people and re-add the national dex now, that it may satisfy fans now, but it'll screw them over worse than their big screw up right now in the future. In the direct future. Okay, rant's over. What do you take away from this? 1, Game Freak is lazy. They're cutting corners. They're holding your Pokemon hostage. They're forgetting the one thing that a Pokemon game is. They add Dynamax because they want to add more usability to all the Pokemon and then get rid of half the Pokemon. And they might be cutting the feature now to be like EA and add it in a future game. Does EA sponsor? I don't think they'll sponsor me anymore. That's what I'm thinking. If it hasn't been clear in the video, since I'm not trying to be biased, I don't think Game Freak should cut this corner off, and they do need to add it back. And unless someone out there can tell me that it'll make the Switch lag to have 1,000 Pokemon coded into it, Pokemon should never be removed from a Pokemon game ever. It should be ever growing with each gen, not become a new piece of pie while we take a break from the previous one. That's just what Pokemon is. And I've said that without even realizing the slogan is gotta catch 'em up. It's like they've forgotten the site, like what Pokemon was. Fam, I can't catch 'em anymore. That's just what Pokemon is. You tell me what you think. Give me your own opinion, not someone else's that just sounds good. Here's to hoping that Game Freak will take back this stupid move and at least bring it back in the 3rd version or as a DLC. Because this cannot continue onward to Gen 9. And then Sinnoh remakes. Sinnoh remakes would be absolutely freaking crushed if half the national dex was again missing after waiting all these years for it. Finally seeing Sinnoh come out in beautiful graphics only for the game we were waiting for all this time to be missing half the Pokemon we wanted to use in it. Rant over, peace. Time to leave. I'm not pissed, I'm just saying. Oh, look, you see this shirt? It's like, this comes out in Gen 8 and they're like, let's take away these. You can only evolve into these now. It's like, fam, what did you introduce these then for? It's like, I want an Umbreon. We don't do Umbreon in this game. Shut the hell up. Check the like button. Peace, guys.